Respected Chair Professor Sanjeev Mittal, USMS, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Our speakers, Mr. M. Lachi Reddy, HR, Shanta, a Sanofi company, Mr. Mangesh R. Gupte, Head CSR, Professor P.K. Chaube, Professor of Economics, IIPA, New Delhi, delegates, participants, media representatives, and students. A very hearty good afternoon to one and all. On behalf of the organizing committee, I once again extend a very warm and hearty welcome to one and all to the Institute of Public Enterprise and to this two-day conference on corporate social responsibility organized under the aegis of NLC Chair on CSR, sponsored by ICSSR and supported by ARI, University of Mara, Malaysia.
The time is always right to do what is right, as said by Martin Luther King Jr. The change in perspective of corporate social responsibility stresses that business cannot be successful when the society around them fails. If companies believe they are in business to serve people, to help solve problems, to use and employ the ingenuity of their workers to improve the lives of people around them by learning from the nature that gave us life, we have a chance.
On this note, I would like to open the panel for discussion. Before that, I would like to introduce you to our chair, Mrs. Professor Sanjeev Mittal at University School Management Studies, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University. Sir, now I would like Shulagna ma'am to please present a floral welcome to sir. Sir's educational qualifications include an MBA, PhD, Service Marketing, NCFM. He has a teaching experience of 29 years to the students of business management, 16 years at the Institute of Management Studies and Research, MD University, Rohtak. Sir has worked as a professor and director at the RDIS Madhubhan Chowk, Rohini. Sir has also written a number of articles in journals in both national and international newspapers, conducted several workshops and on entrepreneurship development and business skills training, and he's an expert in these areas.
I'd like to request Dr. Poonam Singh to present a floral welcome to our next speaker, Mr. M. Lachi Reddy, Head HR, Shanta Biotechnics. Sir is a postgraduate in archaeology and industrial relations and personal management. Sir has worked in industries like wooden particle board, semiconductors, tire and tube manufacturing, pharma, information tech, biotech. Sir is a Senior General Manager, Human Resources at Shanta Biotechnics Private Limited, General Manager, Human Resources at Indian Immunologials for 10 years, Vice President, Human Resources at Tanla Solutions Limited for 2 years, General Manager, Human Resources at Gland Pharma Limited for 2 years, Assistant Manager, HR at MRF Limited for 6 years, Executive Personnel Administration at Grief Semiconductors Limited for 2 years, Officer, Personnel and Administration at Novopan India Limited for 5 years.
Thank you, Manvita. We next have our guest, Mr. Mangesh R. Gupte, Head CSR, Dr. Reddy's. I would like Poonam Singh ma'am to please present a floral bouquet to sir. Mr. Mangesh R. Gupte is a CSR, Sustainability and Responsible Investment professional. He is a postgraduate in Environmental Studies and a Commonwealth Scholar. He has worked in several water engineering and management. His aptitude in socio-engineering through his work on participatory management of public water supply and sanitation, along with background in resources and stakeholder engagement, human rights management, draws him in CSR space. Mr. Mangesh Gupte currently works as Director CSR in Dr. Reddy Laboratories, Hyderabad. Prior to this, he headed CSR and water sustainability of Holison's ACC Cement. He was a co-chairman of WBCSD's India Water Tool and a steering committee of UN CEO Water Mandate. Mr. Mangesh Gupte currently is a part of CII Background Area Committee, wherein he catalyzed collective CSR project in education and water industry members. His particular effort on CSR systems, processes and governance for positive social change is notable.
I would like to call upon Dr. Shulagna Sarkar to present a floral welcome to our next speaker, Professor P.K. Chobe. Sir has been a professor over 24 years. Professor of Economics, Indian Institute of Public Administration, Professor of Economics, G.B. Pant Social Science Institute, Allahabad, Professor of Management, IMS, DA University, Indore, Professor of Economics, School of Economics, DA University, Indore. Sir's publications, projects and consultancies spread over 15 books. To name a few, Growth Models in Indian Planning, Plan Modeling in India, Poverty Measurement, Issues, Approaches and Indices, Sectional Disparity, Indices for Measurement. Sir has published many articles, few of which include Journal of Quantitative Economics, Indian Economic Journal, Indian Journal of Economics, Manpower Journal. Sir has held several editorial positions. To name a few, Editor-in-Chief, UPUEA Economic Journal, Member, Editorial Advisory Board, Indian Economic Journal, Editorial Advisory Board, Indian Journal of Quantitative Economics, Editor, Journal of Income and Wealth, Editorial Advisory Board, Nagarlok. On that note, I would like to request Professor Sanjeev Mittal to take over the session.
Thank you very much. It is indeed a great pleasure to come over here to the Institute of Public Enterprises, and I'm thankful to the director, Professor Mishra, who has been always kind to basically invite people and show his humorous behavior out over here. The dignitaries on the dais, the delegates from the corporates, dear students, faculty member of the Institute. The topic for this conference which has been chosen is the time of the hour, that is corporate social responsibility. And in the morning we had a lot of deliberations, and most of the things on CSR has already been deliberated. Friends, I belong to university, and we are trying to look in for some of the areas which really need to be worked on in the corporate social responsibility. When we talk of corporate social responsibility, it's not only the responsibility that the business owes to the society, but what is more important now, which has to be understood, is how exactly we will be in a position to sustain the CSR activities which are basically being done by the organizations. Various questions were raised in the morning session, whether we are doing the CSR as a part of philanthropy or we are doing the CSR as a part of serious business activity. And I think different viewpoints have been shown out over here. But personally, I feel one thing is very important for every business organization, and I think all people from business organizations are representing in this particular seminar, that if we are getting something from the society as a business, I think it becomes very important for the business also to give back to the society. Now friends, that is why we have started talking in terms of voluntary behavior of what of the business organization, that why we have to make these types of laws out over here in terms of making the organizations to feel responsible towards the society. Why not voluntarily the businesses are trying to do? Friends, I remember of very previous days when we used to talk in terms of Birla, Tata and Dalmias. And these were the three big corporate groups which were in existence, but I could see that Dalmias could fade away. And we were only left with what we are talking in terms of this Birlas and Tatas, because they contributed towards the welfare of the society. I think big educational institutions, if you are trying to talk in terms of, either they were owned by the Birlas or they were owned by whom? By the Tatas. But Dalmias could not do anything for the welfare of the society, friends. And that is how exactly Dalmia's name went down. And I think this is the giving behavior of the organization which is very, very important. And I have basically made a small presentation on this giving behavior and trying to look in for what type of strategies can be adopted by the organizations. We have already looked in for that we need to be a proactive strategy, but what are the different types of strategies what can be there? And these are the things that we are trying to research out over there in our university, and my brief presentation is going to focus on those particular areas. Now if you look in for the preliminary definition of CSR, friends, it is nothing but the company's actions and its impact on what? On the society. I think this is very, very important, friends. And why somebody else has to teach the organizations or the business people, I think as a business, we should be responsible towards the society of our own. When we talk in terms of social responsibility, now this concept is trying to change towards what we are talking in terms of citizenship concept. What is this citizenship concept? Now there are three phases of this citizenship concept. One is corporate social responsibility, where we are trying to emphasize the obligation and accountability of the business towards the society. Second, we are trying to talk in terms of the social responsive behavior of the organization. And over there, when we are talking in terms of socially responsible behavior, we are looked in for a lot number of examples, friend, where we are trying to look in for what are the actions on the part of what the organizations which are there. And friends, I think in Delhi, I have looked in for, or the suburbs of Delhi, I have looked in for, every organization is trying to adopt any one of the parks that we are trying to have. Any type of a circle, I am always finding a board. This circle is maintained by Hero Honda or the Honda, Hero group of companies. Or even I have looked in for educational institutions that are trying to maintain the park. And why they are trying to maintain these types of park is just to create their visibility in terms of what type of actions they are trying to have in terms of what for the society at a large. Then friends, from this responsive behavior, the organizations really need to move towards what we are talking in terms of showing the social performance. And the social performance is nothing but in terms of the outcomes and in terms of the results. And friends, I think this is an established fact that those organizations who are giving to the society, they are also getting back in terms of what organization to work with as a good employee, organization to invest in, organization to buy from, and organization to work for. And I think when these types of feelings, they come over there in the society, I think we are in a position to say that organization really is performing well in terms of what? In terms of the societal expectations. And that is very important. So responsibility to responsiveness and responsiveness to what social performance is what has to be looked in by every business that is operating over there in a society. I think the three types of impacts which companies are trying to have really need to be understood by them. And these three types of impact have already been deliberated in the morning, friends. They are the economic impact, the social impact, and the environmental impacts. And I think all these impacts, if the business is trying to look in for, I think they are trying to become a socially responsible business. Now, these are some of the issues, friend, which is not only being deliberated over here at the India level, but they are being deliberated over at the world level, friends. And we are talking in terms of how exactly we are in a position to what? Safeguard the labor rights. I think we have already looked in for that human rights is already there, and any type of a product where human rights violation is there, it's not being acceptable. And in India, friends, the carpet was renamed as what? Kaleen. Just to give this feeling to whom? To the world that we are not using what? Any type of a labor below the age of what? 18. So I think these types of social accountability issues, and I think every organizations these days who are into what? The international business are trying to take this certification called as SA 8000. What is SA 8000? It is Social Accountability 8000 certification, which basically gives this mandate to the organization that human rights violation has not been there. Environmental, I think, conditions really have to be what? Taken into consideration, and businesses have to look in for that. They are not trying to be detrimental to the environment. I think thanks to what is called as a green movement, and that green movement is nothing but an initiative on the part of what? The organizations to say to the society that we are responsible business houses. Poverty alleviation, I think that is also a mandate for what? CSR, because it has been looked in by all nations across the world, friends, that poverty anywhere is a threat to what? Prosperity everywhere in the world. And friends, that is why the developed countries are interested to what? Develop the developing countries. And that is how exactly a lot of aids and donations are coming from where? From the developed nations to the developing nations. And if the businesses are trying to understand this concept of poverty alleviation, I think that is the right spirit what the businesses are trying to have when they are trying to talk in terms of corporate social responsibility. Now, therefore, when we talk of CSR, friends, these four words are very important. It has to be a continuing activity because it is a campaign, friends. It is a crusade which has been taken by a business. If you are into CSR, then basically you cannot think in terms of moving out of CSR. You cannot think in terms of this year I am going to do the CSR, next year I am not going to do the CSR. Friends, even if you are not in terms of profits, friend, if profit is not there in the organization, still you have to continue with what? With CSR. Because if you are involved in CSR, then only, friends, it is a type of a crusade, it's a continuous activity. The second very important thing is that you have to have a commitment. Now, it cannot be taken as what? As a concept, friends. It has to be taken as what? A commitment on the part of whom or the organization. And what type of a commitment that they are committed towards what? Welfare of the society. And why it is very important, friends, because if society is giving you the business, they are giving you the employees, they are giving you what? The profits. I think you have also to give back to the society. And that is the commitment behavior, friends. But friends, all these things had to be done in a very ethical and what? In a valuable manner, friends. And that is very important. Because if you are ethically involved in what? This type of CSR activity, where there is no type of a corruption, friends. But whenever I talk to the organizations, I look in for to what extent they are really involved in CSR. Apollos have built Apollo Hospital over there. Jaipur Golden has built a Jaipur Golden Hospital. But what was their mandate with which they have built this hospital? I think they had taken lands from the government at a concessional rate. But then the mandate was that they are going to provide free medical health to whom? To the economical weaker section. And if we are in a position to just try to analyze and try to understand to what extent and how many number of weaker section of the society have been what? Helped by them, I think that is what is the performance metrics we really have to look in for. And thanks to all these types of government schemes where we are trying to talk in terms of DGCHS or CGHS, all these types of medical schemes, I think they have given a lot of business to whom? To these hospitals, and they have lost the spirit of what? With what they started in terms of what? Discharging the corporate social responsibility. So I think ethically business organizations have to be really say up to the mark that whatever, with what mandate they had come out with, whether they are in a position to do it or not. But the ultimate aim is nothing but to improve what? The quality of the life. And if that is the ultimate aim, to improve the quality of life, I think that is the real meaning of what we are talking in terms of CSR. I think Tata's, everybody has talked in terms, and Tata's were the pioneers, and they were the first basically to enter into this particular, say, CSR activities. And we had already seen a video where basically we had looked in for Jamshedji is already talking in terms, they are not spending only 2%, but they're spending what? 4%. So I think the mandate has to be there that if we are trying to work for a society, definitely society is also going to help. I am looked in for, these are the two major sectors where most of the CSR activities have been discharged by these big corporate houses. One I have looked in for is the health sector, and second I have looked in for is what is called as the education sector. But of late, I think we are also trying to look in for, Birlas, I think if I mention the name of Birlas have also come in for a lot of religious activities. Because a lot of mandirs, temples, they have been made by whom? By these Birlas. Tatas have also done some religious work, and ultimately with a philanthropist approach. So I think there is a social cause, and I think if the business is trying to move for that social cause, it is really what we are talking in terms of what? Responsible behavior of the business towards the society. There are certain type of models, friend, I'll not go in for these. Economic model was there, and economic model was what? If you are trying to have a profit, let us try to what? Spend certain part of the profit for the welfare of the society. Now then we have started moving towards a legal model where we are trying to look in for, if somebody is not trying to discharge its own responsibilities, let us try to make it legally that they have to discharge the responsibility, and for that we have already section 135 incorporated as a part of what? Companies Act. And then we had the historical perspective. I think all those things have already been worked out. I'll not basically dwell on these things. But what I'll basically try to talk in terms of is what is the iron law of what? Responsibility. And that is very, very important, friends. And some different viewpoints which are coming up, friends. And these viewpoints are very, very important. And if you are trying to look in for how exactly the progression of the CR responsibility has been undertaken out over there with passage of time, I think this slide is going to help you to understand. And finally, we are trying to look in for that. We are trying to balance the profits and what? The social obligations that we are trying to have. And that is how exactly businesses are started emphasizing the part of their report when we are talking in terms of CSR. Now, I think this Carroll's 4-part of definition has already been told in the morning, friends. I'll not basically work on it, but philanthropist dimension, ethical dimension, legal, and what? Economic responsibility. And economic is nothing but be profitable. Legal is what? Obey the legal rules and regulation. Ethical is do what is right, fair, and just. And when we talk of philanthropy, is be a good corporate citizen. And this was, I think, if you look in for 1964, this Carroll has already talked in terms of. But I think during those times, organizations could not understand the viewpoint of the Carroll. But now I think it is being implemented in the right spirit. look in for a very big organization of America, Walmart, friends. This is how exactly they are trying to look in for what? A stakeholder audit. And friends, it has been debated again in the morning whether we should talk in terms of the shareholder or the stakeholder. I think the larger interest should be of what? Of the stakeholder. And that is why I think there is no difference of the opinion that instead of shareholder model, we should look in for what? The stakeholder model and try to understand who are our stakeholders. And if we are trying to look in for the village around is our stakeholder, I think we have to do something good for what? For the villages also. I belong to a university, friends, a very interesting example I like to quote out over here. Now, our university is a university which belongs to Delhi State. And Delhi State also decided that let us try to have a mandate in terms of doing something for the society. And as a part of the, say, University of State, we have been assigned this responsibility that university is going to adopt 5 villages. And friends, as a university, we are also trying to do what we are talking in terms of what? Corporate social responsibility, in terms of what? Looking in for what is the social economic status of these 5 villages and trying to look in for how exactly the socio-economic status of these 5 villages can be improved. So friends, I just want to put it on record now. It is not only the awareness among the business houses who are doing something for profit, but the educational institutions which are there for a cause in terms of what? Educating the masses, they have also realized that it is also what? Their responsibility to do something for the society. And that is how exactly we have started doing. And our basic main objective will be how exactly we will be in a position to what? Improve the sanitation facilities out over there. So therefore, we will be a channel through which we will be getting money from where? From the business houses and trying to create what? Sanitation facilities out over here in these villages. And also trying to look in for how exactly the waters which is there in the form of ponds, har gaon mein ek talab hota hai. And we are trying to look in for how exactly the water in that pond or in that talab can be what? Reinstated. And on those lines, if the university can do something, I think it becomes mandatory for all organizations to be a responsible citizen. Now, how exactly this CSR can be implemented, friends? I think this is the same type of a checklist what we can try to have it in terms of you plan and find out who are your stakeholders, consult them, have some code of conduct, and then set targets, friend. Then do. That means you really have to implement the thing, establish management systems and personnel, promote code compliance, and check is in terms of major progress, audit, report, and act is in terms of what are the corrective actions that need to be